Hello, Kris here, Green Sabre, Doom Telly time, episode 34. Okay, today's going to be a large one, so I will do my best to try and keep it somewhere resembling, sorry, kick the camera there, somewhere resembling concise. But as you will probably all know by now, concise and me are not a mixture that particularly works very often. So, anyway, I'm sure you will all enjoy my inane chit-chat anyway. But today, I've decided to do guitarists that I am influenced by. So there were so fucking many, quite frankly, that this could have been like a three-parter. In fact, there's a part of me now, even as I say that, that's wondering, should I have done it in a couple of parts? No, let's do it all in one. Again, I will try and rein it in to the best of my ability. Few honourable mentions, but I've slimmed it down to a top 15. Now, the parameters that I've set are basically the guitarists that have had the most influence on how I play and how this feeds into Green Sabre. Yeah, so not necessarily my favourite guitarists of all time, because there will be a lot of soloists in there, and I can't solo for shit, as you have probably already heard on our stuff. Nor am I'm at the age now where, is there any point in fucking learning? Yeah, you should always learn. Yeah, sorry, that's terrible. Terrible advice to all you budding guitarists out there. Always learn. Always keep going, trying to get better. But I've got by this far with that. I've always been the rhythm guitarist in bands. It's only really this one where I've had to be the kind of solo front, and our solos aren't really solos. I will go into that anyway, because when I cover one of the guitarists that's a huge influence on me, I will make the point there as to what my solos, what the point of them are, really, as such. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah. Top guitarists of all time. Biggest guitarist influences on me of all time. And leading into Green Sabre. So that's what we're going to do. Before we start, really quick update. Rehearsed last night. We did rehearsed a couple of sets because we've got this gig, as I've mentioned, and I will keep mentioning until it happens. Sunday, 25th of June, the Underground in Bradford. We're supporting Kill the Witch and Void Lurker, I believe, are on now. We'll be opening. I think we're on at about 7:45, 8 o'clock. Not quite sure how long we've got yet, though. We don't know if it's a half-hour set or a 40-minute. So it can go one of two ways, but we rehearsed 2 potential sets last night, so yeah. Really good. It was a fucking hot one, though, so yeah, it wasn't without its trials and tribulations, and as any of you guitarists will know, trying to keep your fucking tuning in extreme temperatures is easier said than done, so yeah, a bit of constant tweakage going on, but yeah, other than that, really good rehearsal, so that's only a few weeks off now. So, yeah, that's the update. Nothing else to report, I don't think. So, draw a line under that. Let's talk about the most influential guitarist to me. So, right, what I'm going to do first is rattle off the honourable mentions list, of which there are a lot. Half of these honourable mentions are guitarists that, like I say, are sort of more notorious for soloing, so you wouldn't think have a massive influence on me, but they sort of do in part. And whereas others, yeah, are an influence but haven't made this top 15. So let's go through it. So what I'm going to do first is rattle off contemporary influences on me. And the reason that these didn't make the list is because they are all big influences on me. But to the point where I heard them after I started, a long time after I started doing this, so it's not really influenced me as a guitarist yet. They might do, yeah. So rattle off contemporary influences. Stephen Carpenter out of the Deftones. I know Deftones polarise people, but I love them. I think they're fucking ace. I love that shoegazy, ethereal kind of waily thing that they do and the atmosphere of the guitars and so on. And I love Stephen's guitars in particular because they're so heavy. I mean, I know he uses like fucking 38 string guitars or whatever the fuck it is now. He just keeps adding a string. He's like the Wilkinson sword of guitarists. He just keeps adding another razor and so on until, like, you know, but yeah, his neck must be fucking, on the guitar that is, must be fucking huge. So yeah, Stephen Carpenter, big influence. Brent Hinds and Bill Kelleher of Mastodon, massive influence. They were number 16 of this list as such, like, very, very big influence on me. The reason that they didn't make it is that they're relatively new to me. I say relatively new. I've probably been listening to them 10 years now, but yeah, so relatively new to me. Maybe not 10 year, 8 year. Anyway, something like that. I think it, maybe around 2005, 2006, 2007. Maybe that's the, anyway, whatever it was. So yeah. But I love how Bill Kelleher constructs riffs. I love Brent Hines' fucking insane soloage. If I could be a soloist, I think I want to be Brent Hines. I'll just love his style. There's almost like a banjo style to it. He uses a lot of pick and finger when he's soloing. If you watch him, it's fucking mental what he's doing. Yeah, and I just love it. His solos are beautiful. So yeah, big influence on me. Another one that I would like to doff my cap to is Chris Norton. From Winterfilleth and Atavist fame. He's also the live guitarist for Arth at the minute, who I'll be going and seeing tonight at the Huddersfield Town Hall. I'm very excited about that, but that's another story. Yeah, Chris Norton, I love how he writes songs, how he constructs riffs, and and if you see him live, he makes it look effortless, really, as well. And yeah, so a big soon to be a big influence, but yeah, a guitarist that I really admire. Other guitarists, of course, that have formed me as a person. Dave Murray, Iron Maiden. Jeff Hanneman of Slayer, of course. Bill Steer, Carcass, Napalm Death. James Murphy. I adore James Murphy's solos. I'll never be able to play like him. But every album that he's been on has often been my favourite of that band. Spiritual Healing is still my current favourite Death album. Yeah, shock horror, but I love it. I love it. It's that really good bridge between the old school death metal and the new, more technical stuff. And I just love his solos on it as well. I love his solos on Cause of Death, which is comfortably Obituary's best album for me personally. I love his solos on the Cancer album, Not to the Gory End. What's it fucking called? Death Shall Rise. Comfortably Cancer's best record. I love his solos and his guitar work on the Disincarnate album. Dreams of the Carrion Kind, was it? They only did that one, didn't they? Anyway, yeah. I love everything he puts his name to. Not Testament's best album that he was on, but I do like that one. Yeah, I love him. John Christ of Danzig. Oh, just the tone and what he did. Subtlety, but fucking stellar chops as well when needed. That classic Danzig lineup, unrivaled. Jim Martin of Faith No More, simple but effective, but not that simple either when you listen to his classical chops and his solos that he rips into. And still Faith No More's best guitarist for me, personally. And moving on from that, Trace Bruins, who joined them on the King for a Day album, and Mr. Bungle's guitarist. Big influence on me about how eclectic he can mix all these styles into one piece. Yeah, phenomenal guitarist. The guitar prong of Skyclad, Steve Ramsey and Dave Pugh. Dave, a good friend of mine and phenomenal soloist. And he's taught me a lot, not just about guitaring, but about gear and about setup. And I owe Dave a lot, quite honestly, for helping me sort of become the guitarist that I am. I've played in various bands with him over the years. And yeah, I've mentioned lots of times, but our drummer Brian, his brother Dave, so that's the connection. Yeah, he's been a massive influence on me. So therefore, listening to Skyclad, Steve Ramsey as well, how he attacks, and his fucking downpicking is right up there with Hetfield. Phenomenal talent. Yeah. Justin Broderick, simple but crushingly heavy, and how you've always got to fill space. I'll go into that in greater detail shortly, but you've got to fill space correctly and not make it idle. Some are busier than others. Anyway, like I say, I'll go into it. But what Justin Broderick does is that atmosphere he creates, just the kind of industrial style thing that he does. But the heaviness, and then just the cutaway to sort of like little notes run out and blah, blah, and yeah, and that tone that he always has. So, yeah, big influence on me as well. Johnny Marr of The Smiths and Graham Coxon of Blur. I know you'll be thinking, what the fuck? Yes, an influence. Particularly, as I've just sort of said, no dead air. You listen to how they construct guitar riffs and pieces, and I love some Smiths songs. I've not got any albums in the collection. It's difficult to get past the massive bell-endedness that is Morrissey, but I love Johnny Marr's guitar style. I just that sort of everything, every single little note is thought of. And Graham Coxon is the same in Blur. There's no dead air. Everything he does. You listen to some of the album cuts off of Part Life, not the fucking obvious ones as such, which are the two weakest tracks on that album comfortably. But some of the album cuts off of Part Life and the album cuts off of the one that followed it, The Great Escape. Really stunning guitar work, and if you're a guitarist, honestly check them out because it really shouldn't go unnoticed. They're very, very good at what they do. So yeah, those are my honourable mentions, and the final ones, of course, the biggies that have formed me wanting to play guitar: Frank Zappa, Steve Vai, Robert Fripp, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page. I mean, yeah, the list goes on of the classic guitarists that, of course, it wouldn't be a proper list if I didn't at least mention them. But they're not in my top 15. Right, 10 minutes, let's crack on. Sorry, 11 minutes even. So, number 15 of the guitarists that most influenced me as a guitarist. And I use that very loosely. I wouldn't consider me a guitarist. I make noises on a guitar. I think that's probably the best way of saying it. Number 15... the two-pronged attack, and I know, yeah, this is two people technically, but I don't quite know who does what a lot of the time, so that's why I've included them both. Eric Cutler and Danny Corrales of Autopsy. Just phenomenal guitar sound, both of them. It's just pure evil, dirty, slimy, sludgy, horrible. Just horrible. Yeah, absolutely perfect tone for this band. I just whipped out this one, the classic debut as well. This is a Peaceville Picture This reissue of it. I'd love the original, but I'm not made of money, kids. So yeah, a great soloist. Much under, there are people out there that's kind of deride what these are two phenomenally good guitarists, are Eric and Danny, and they really, it is worth a fucking hearty mention. And yeah, it's that combination of death metal and doom metal that they're so good at riff-wise, but incorporating a really fucking stellar solo and still making it sound horrible and dirty in amongst all of that. And they had a big effect on me. I've got a few more of theirs, but yeah, I just thought I'd whip out these two as a sort of case in point. They had a big effect on me and how to write nasty as such, or at least try. There's not a massive amount of that in Green Sabre, but there's a little bit here and there that rears its head, and some of the more new stuff has got some slightly nastier elements to it. But yeah, that nasty, dirty horribleness is a direct influence from these two guys. So hats off to Eric and Danny of Autopsy. The next one that had a profound effect on me, guitar-wise, is Kim Thayil, I believe is how it's pronounced. I could be wrong though, so apologies. Kim Thayil of Soundgarden. This is the only one I've got on vinyl, so I thought I'd whip this one out. But it's a good case in point, Bad Motorfinger, because it's some of his finer guitar work with Soundgarden. What Kim does is he has a kind of, there's Jimmy Page sensibilities to what he does, but in a kind of unhinged way. And I love the ethereal sound that he created with spare notes and just that it was always a little off kilter. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. A really off kilter style to guitaring, and for me, you know, you can hear a Kim Thayil riff a million mile away. The Bad Motorfinger and Super Unknown are my favourite Soundgarden records. This one may be just top at the minute, but them two tend to fluctuate. But what he brings to the game, I mean, I'm trying to think of, Jesus Christ Pose is a great case in point where you've got them really weird, really weird little oddities that just drive the rhythm. And then you've got Rusty Cage, of course. There's Outshined, which is the one on here that, there's Holy Water, which I fucking adore. What's the one I'm thinking of, though? Room 1,000 Years Wide. Very, very simple and just that kind of droning solo bend kind of thing that he has going on in the background. And I just think he's a phenomenal guitarist. And it's that slight otherworldliness that I've learned a lot from how he layers Soundgarden's sound. So yeah, my number 14, Kim Thayil of Soundgarden. Let's rattle through these. We're already at 15 minutes. Okay, my number 13. And a big influence on me. Not originally, because I didn't really know about them. It was via Faith No More that I discovered this band in actual fact. But the band is the Melvins, and the guitarist is the almighty Buzz Osborne. I've been lucky enough to catch him live a few times, and he's a phenomenal performance in an understated way. I mean, he's not understated to look at. He wears some fucking bizarre outfits while he's up there. And there's very little talk. In fact, I don't think he says a fucking thing between songs, really. But it is his guitar attack. There is, I mean, this one, there's lots of Melvins that I need on vinyl. The particular one I'm after is Lysol, but, I mean, I'd have to sell the child, I think, in order to get myself a copy of that. So, not happening anytime soon, I'm afraid, kids. But this is the album that got me into the Melvins. I mean, when's this? Is it 93? Did it first come out? It wasn't 93 that I listened to it. No, I mean, it'd be like fucking, God, 98, 99 possibly when I first heard this. Yeah, anyway, so they've gone under the radar because they always kind of got lumped in with the grunge thing. And although I flirted with the grunge scene and I love Soundgarden, I loved Alice in Chains. I preferred Soundgarden and Alice in Chains than I did Nirvana and Pearl Jam. So that you could see where it was more the rock grunge thing as opposed to the grunge thing that I preferred. Melvin's always got sort of lumped in with that, and until I discovered them, I realised that was wholly unfairly because they're absolutely fucking nothing like grunge. What Buzz does on guitar is unrivaled. I should have dug out the Fantomas CD because he's a Fantomas guitarist, and what he brings to that is fucking brilliant. Just a great attack, strong riffage, really almost like Sludge Doom sensibilities with his riffage, but just sort of off the scale as well with other stuff. And it's there's one on here, and it's not Hooch, is it? Night Goat? No, hang on. Wait for it. Oh, Honey Bucket. It's Honey Bucket on here. You try fucking playing that. It's really, really difficult. It sounds really straightforward. You've got that. Anyway, I won't sing badly my way through it. But all the sort of, you've got the downstroke and then the upstroke and the accent changes, and it's way more fucking difficult than it sounds. So try that, kids. Honey Bucket off of here. But Buzz Osborne, phenomenal guitarist and a big, big influence on my style. And hence why I'm wearing the t-shirt, kids. Okay, my number, don't want to get confused here, my number 12, newcomer in some respects, but a very, very big influence on how I attack Green Sabre's sound as such, like. And it is a guy called Mike Sullivan, who you will probably still be looking blank at me, from the band Russian Circles. They're a kind of post-metal, post-rock, if you will. There's elements of doom in there, but not really. There's elements of progressive in there, but not really. But it's an all-over attack, orally, as such, like, you know. It's just a sort of audio barrage. I discovered this band as support to Mastodon, on the, I think it was a Once More Around the Sun tour. It was at the Academy in Manchester anyway, and these were, I think they were it was Crocodile, and then Russian Circles, yeah, next. And they opened with the track Deficit off of this album. This is the Memorial album, and their finest hour for me. I think when's it from? I think it's like sort of 2007 or 2008, potentially. Or it might be a bit later than that, anyway. It probably is a bit later than that. Anyway, ignore me. But the track Deficit, just wallop. Instrumental as well. There's no vocal. Well, there's the vocals by Chelsea Wolfe on the last track. Stunning. I mean, I love Chelsea Wolfe stuff, but that's another story for another video. But yeah, the way he harmonises, if you listen to Mike Sullivan's harmony approach over the top of the main riff, you will be like, I see what you're doing there, Kris. Yeah. Very, very big influence on how he structures that harmony over the top. The harmony kind of lead is harmony rhythm, I should say, sorry, is a main effect that we use in Green Sabre. And I got it wholly from listening to how he weaves it in. So Mike Sullivan is a big influence on me. If you've not heard of Russian Circles, do check him out. Apparently the name is a hockey drill. Ice hockey training drill, Russian Circles. So yeah, there you go. Mike Sullivan though, cracking guitarist, check him out. Okay, my number 11 is Adam Lehan. Yes. Adam has been an enormous influence on how I structure riffage and try and write doom and broody and moody combined. Obviously, this record has been on like about fucking 18 of my videos, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm dragging it out again. Cathedral's Forest of Equilibrium. It's not just Adam on here. Gaz Jennings as well is a big influence on me on how he constructs riffs. But it's Adam's songs that had more of an effect on me. Just the otherworldliness, the etherealness of them. And there was an atmosphere that his riffs created. I mean, if you ask him, he'd probably tell you that he had no idea how he come up with them. He just did. But fucking hell, I wish I could come up with something like that. Just absolute barrage of doomy magnificence. And Adam is one of the greats at it for me. I mean, one of the early pioneers, certainly of the British wave of doom metal. But what he does is just phenomenal on this album, and I could go on. I mean, I've dug out this one as well. Acid Rain's Obnoxious, because he's got quite a lot of writing credit on this one. Acid Rain's finest album for me as well. Not sure about the cover, but that was the idea. But just, yeah, and just his riffage. There's some beautiful acoustic guitar on here, and there's some great riffage in Codes of Conformity and in, which one is it? Is it Creative Restraint? Anyway, it's one of them. Great riffs. He's just a great riff writer, is Adam. Much undervalued as well, so check him out. Phenomenal. But yeah, my number, wait for it, 11. Yeah, Adam Lehan. Hats off, Adam. Okay, my number 10. Another slightly left field approach, but it's Geordie Walker from Killing Joke. This is my favourite Killing Joke album, so that's why it keeps getting a video outing. But his riffs on here are so fucking heavy. He's still using that same old massive Gibson guitar thing that he uses. And just his tone. I think a lot of it is his tone. And again, as I mentioned before with like Johnny Marr and people like that, it's what he does with the notes that you're not listening to, if that makes any sense. It's the atmosphere and the ring out notes that he... And Geordie Walker's one of the fucking best at it. He just creates amazing atmosphere with his just undersold as such, like underscored, what's the word I'm looking for? Subtle. It's so subtle, a lot of what he does. I mean, if you watch him live, he looks like he's bored out of his mind. He's just like, there's absolutely zero energy coming from him, apart from that guitar that is all energy. You know, just fucking phenomenal. I mean, Jazz Coleman makes up for that if you've ever seen Killing Joke live. If you haven't, do so. They're a fucking great live band. But yeah, what Geordie Walker brings, I mentioned on another video, it is another one where I love is More Understated of Nighttime, sorry, this album. The more understated and more 80s kind of vibe that he's got going on, but there's more of a Faith No More vibe on here, so you could see why they went after him when they were looking for a guitarist that time. And again, like I mentioned on a previous video, I would have loved to have heard what he did with Faith No More, but alas. But yeah, Geordie Walker. Huge influence on me. Okay, right. Number 9. Let's start speeding this up now. And for pure riff attack and that heavy thump that I've kind of made my sound, it's got to be Scott Ian from Anthrax. This might be my favourite Anthrax record, if I had to pick one. It's where I feel like Joey was coming into his own on this album, and it was his last one before they replaced him with John Bush. But you could hear that the writing style was moving towards Bush, if you will. So, yeah, you can hear that kind of transient sound to it all. But some of the riffs on here, I mean, fucking Keep It in the Family, Belly of the Beast, Time, the title track, Blood, there's some great ones on there. What's the other one? I mentioned Keep It in the Family, didn't I? In My World, the lead single off of that. There's some absolute fucking gems on it. And Scott Ian has got such a heavy rhythm attack. It would be remiss of me not to mention him. He's an enormous influence on me. Just that crunch, that thump. For years, he was the heaviest guitarist I could think of, sound-wise. Yeah, but Scott Ian, huge influence on me. Okay, number 8. And it would be remiss of me not to mention Andrew Craigan of My Dying Bride. Again, a record that's had several outings on my videos, but Turn Loose the Swans. What he did rhythm-wise and songwriting-wise was like a light bulb moment for me. I mean, I've realised that I've not mentioned Danny and Vince out of Anathema. Again, big influences on me on how the early stuff in particular, on how I wrote. But I feel that Andrew and My Dying Bride is more the style that we have in guitar-wise, certainly in Green Sabre. So it was a way he combined doom metal and death metal absolutely seamlessly, and they did it off of the first album as well, the classic As the Flower Withers. And just that seamless transition of death metal riffage, but done in a doom style. And there's an eeriness to a lot of the doomy riffs that he writes as well. Now, another thing that's worth mentioning, and something that me and Gaz are directly influenced by, is the tone and sound of the guitars on a My Dying Bride album. Because they have that crunch, they have that chug. We consciously went down that route with the Green Sabre style, because of course a lot of modern doom and modern sludge and that kind of stuff has a very fuzz heavy guitar sound. I mean, that is part of it. We'll get to that on the next record that I can see in the corner of my eye, but a lot of bands just follow that we consciously didn't go for that. We were always, when we set up Green Sabre and as a follow on from Desolate, our band before, it was always a hark back to the classic first wave of British doom. Cathedral, My Dying Bride, Anathema, Paradise Lost. The list goes on. It was always a hark back to those bands. So we wanted that tone. It had to be more that old school death doom. Not modern death doom, old school death doom tone. Modern death doom's sort of got that tone as it is anyway. But yeah, we consciously went back to, and it was with Andrew Craigan's guitar sound in mind. We went for that more chunky 90s death metal guitar, almost as such, but with a doom attack. So, enormous influence on me. Okay, number 7. Can't mention guitarist without talking about the almighty, godlike Matt Pike. Some of the riffs on here are just unrivaled. And although we don't necessarily sound a lot like Sleep, how he writes riffs has always been. One of our tracks, Fracture, there's a bit in there where I'm clearly kind of doffing the cap to Matt Pike. It's as close as I've ever managed to sort of sound, and it doesn't really sound like him at all. But yeah, I just love how he can... I mean, there's riff after riff after riff on this album. I could have brought out Dope Smoker as well, because that's just an absolute riff marathon. And also, his other band, High on Fire, that I'm a huge admirer of. And I thought I'd whip out this one, my repress, enormous fucking booklet, triple version of fucking Art of Self-Defense, the debut. The one that probably sounds closest to a Sleep record, but still has the subtle differences. Just his tone and how he writes riffs. Phenomenal guitarist, a great soloist as well. I love everything he does, Matt Pike, and just a big, big influence on me. And just outside of the top 5, mentioned lots of times, and I've dug out Atma record because this is a riff assault as well. Mike Scheidt from Yob. Just phenomenal, phenomenal riff writer. It's just one massive riff after another, and his tone is just without rival. I would kill for that tone. Again, like I just mentioned before, it's not a tone that we would naturally go for in Green Sabre because it's a bit fuzzier. It's a bit more stoner, American stoner doom than it is classic British doom. And we were going clearly for classic British doom sound with a modern take on it, if that makes sense. So that's what we've gone with. But yeah, as far as more modern guitarist influences, absolutely enormous influence on me, certainly in the start out period of Green Sabre. So yeah, I just love watching him work. Just, if you've seen him live, oh, just breathtaking. And just his, I like I say, just seamless. He makes it look effortless, riff after riff. Amazing. The top 5 now. I'm moving away from the riff, and probably you won't hear it natural, but he formed pretty much how I play rhythm, in a sense. Chuck Schuldiner of Death. I've dug out the Human album, which was massive to me at the time. I've not dug out my favourite, but I dug out this other one with the classic death metal riffage on it of Leprosy. Obviously not solo-wise, because I can't solo, I've mentioned that. But what he does riff-wise, it just is... There's an element of prog in the later stuff, the simplicity, the death metal amazingness of his earlier stuff. And he's influenced me enormously on how I construct riffs. Just that whole, like, breakdown and building stuff up again and all that is sort of an enormous... Maybe not as obvious in a doom band, obviously, because there was nothing doomy about death, but just everything about his approach has just drained into me over the years. So it would be absolutely remiss of me to do a guitarist top 15 or whatever without mentioning him, because he's had such a huge influence on me from my early formative years. I mean, I think I started playing guitar when I was 13. I got my first guitar when I was 13. And it won't have been long after that I discovered him. I think maybe I was 15, 16, 15 maybe when I first discovered death. And yeah, the rest is... Hang on, let me think about this. 8, 10... No, it might have been them earlier, like 13, 14 maybe. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, huge influence on me. Number 4. And another huge influence on me. Mr. Iommi, of course. How could I do a list of guitarists that have influenced me without mentioning this guy? Maybe not directly, if I have to say. I nearly pulled out the Bruce Franklin from Trouble. That is what he's called, isn't it? Yeah, I went a fucking blank there. Anyway, nearly pulled out some Trouble records to discuss their guitar work, and probably should have done. But then I thought, ultimately, it all comes back to this guy. And although his influence got into me via other sources, a lot of it, I have to credit him. Really, I mean, you could maybe argue that this whole list should have just been Sabbath records in that respect. But, yeah, I mean, Volume 4 here, my personal favourite, Master of Reality. That's just Sabbath's doomiest record for me. Yeah, and just... I mean, I don't really need to get this one. Another massive influence on me. My second favourite Sabbath record. And this one, the debut, my 4th favourite Sabbath record. Volume 4 is my 3rd, by the way. But anyway, yeah, I don't need to go into too much detail because you all know. The way that Iommi changed the world of metal forever, I wouldn't be the guitarist I am now without the riffs that he's written. So, he had to go in. I think that's it, really. Yeah. Right, my top 3 are the biggest influences on me as how I play guitar. Now, I don't profess to be anywhere near as good as him, but I'm talking, of course, about Dave Gilmour of Pink Floyd. The one that you'll all know is guitar licks from. My favourite, Wish You Were Here, I've not dug out because it's in that weird kind of black plastic sleeve and it's a pig to get out. So, yeah. Dark Side of the Moon, of course. But this one, some of his best guitar work is on this album, 1977's Animals. Love this record. Might be my second favourite Floyd. Wish You Were Here is my first. This one second. Dark Side of the Moon third. Pardon me. Again, the art of subtlety. I've heard somebody described Dave Gilmour as sort of like, fucking shite him. All he does is bend a note for like 10 minutes. And I suppose he sort of does. But he bends it beautifully. You want to learn how to bend a note properly with all 100% feel. Listen to this guy. He will show you how. Adam's another guy. I mean, Adam will fucking punch me for mentioning him in the same light as Dave Gilmour, I imagine. He's like, don't be daft, lad. But, yeah, just like saying, feel. It's all about feel, and Gilmour is all about feel. A phenomenal guitarist as well. I mean, he's plenty of chops. He just rarely uses them because you don't need to. But, is it the track High Hopes off of the Division Bell? What a solo at the end of that, fucking hell. And yeah, just, he has an influence. I was going to go into my terrible solos. And it's Dave Gilmour and another guy that's about to get mentioned that are my biggest influence with how I solo. Mine is the less is more approach. I can't do the full fucking Satriani chops because I've not got them in the tank. I can't play like that. And also, what we do doesn't need it. So, yeah. Dave Gilmour is where I am. If I had a kind of soloist spirit animal, it would be a combination of Dave Gilmour and the guy coming in at my number 2. Paradise Lost's Gregor MacIntosh. His Gothic, their finest hour. But I dug out this one as well because this is a pure riff assault. Shades of God, the album that followed it. Stunning riffs on here. And Paradise Lost's tribute to Trouble, I would say, this album. There's a lot of Trouble influence on there, which I adore. Gregor was the first guitarist that made me realise, as a guitarist back then, that sort of, I can play like that, and that's no detriment to Gregor. I'm not fucking downplaying what he does. But it sounded doable. It was like, he's not doing a lot there, but what he's doing is so fucking effective. Don't get me wrong, Gregor is a phenomenal guitarist, but he made me realise, hey, I could do that without, you know, you'd listen to stuff like I say, I'd mentioned listening to Death and stuff, and they'd play these riffs that you'd be keeping up with. They'd rip into a solo, and I'd just be like, oh, I'll wait for the next bit then, lads. Because I was never just, no, you've lost me. I've no idea what you're doing there. Anyway, I should learn. I really should. But what Gregor did, and it's his subtle harmonies and the way that his solos didn't do a lot, but didn't need to do a lot. They just accentuated, they boosted certain sections. And it's the way that he harmonises over a riff. Thinking like the Painless, you've got the bow, bow. You've just got the notes ringing, the chords ringing out in the background with his that right there in a nutshell is why Gregor almost was my number 1 guitarist. But yeah, I mean, I'll go into that shortly. But it just, how he constructs, how he writes, how he harmonises is everything. If you've heard us, you will know that, how big an influence Gregor is on my guitar playing. Gaz, the other guitarist as well, would tell you the same. So yeah, Gregor MacIntosh, Paradise Lost, my number 2. My number 1, you may have already worked out, and not obvious in our sound, but obvious in my style. Mr. James Hetfield. I've dug out Ride the Lightning, my battered old copy, my absolutely walloped old copy of it's the double 45 version of it, this, of Master of Puppets, beautiful sound. And the first Metallica record that I bought on vinyl. This is the original as well. And Justice for All. He has shaped how, he was the reason I wanted to pick up well, actually maybe Dave Murray was the reason I wanted to pick up a guitar, but James Hetfield was the reason that I wanted to study it and learn how to play like him. I remember listening to it thinking, what an assault, it's just an assault. James Murphy's also the reason that I decided that I didn't need to learn soloing. I thought, no, I want to be a rhythm guitarist like James Hetfield. I want to play rhythm like he does. I don't profess to be able to play it anywhere near as good as James does, because he's one of the finest downpickers in the business. What Metallica have become is another fucking story, but those formative years and the first 4 or 5 Metallica records, fucking Jesus. An absolute lesson in how to play rhythm guitar. Just frantic, busy. A lot of stuff as well that goes under the radar because you're busily listening to fucking Kirk Hammett's whammy lessons, but fucking the riffs that he played behind solos, I think of a great case in point is the riff behind the solo in Frayed Ends of Sanity on Justice for All. Listen to that. I think there might be on YouTube somewhere a stripped down version without it. But anyway, his approach to rhythm guitar was just everything to me, and it formed what I've become. That's why I wanted to concentrate on rhythm. He's solid, styled at chunky, crunchy, everything. Just, yeah. I am here now, bothering you with videos, bothering you with riffs in my band because of how James Hetfield played, and I wanted to be that. And again, some of his stunning rhythms, the dual guitar harmonies that, yeah, they probably ripped off of Judas Priest to a point, but they made it their own more than anything. And just, yeah. My number 1, James Hetfield. Right, 40 fucking minutes, guys. I knew it was going to be a big one, but I'm surprised I got it in under an hour, so thank you very much for watching. Thanks for the drip of new subscribers that I've had as well. Yeah, I can't thank you guys enough. Like and subscribe, as always. Let's keep that building. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, don't know what next week's is going to be yet. We'll just have to wait and see. But until that point, thank you guys, and I will see you again soon. Ta-da!